The cave was just the way I remembered it from my dreams. The rock was an odd blue color, the stone so old it appeared to have dragged itself whole from the depths of the earth. The drip from the ceiling was constant, our hooves coming down in puddles of water more often than not. The tunnels were cut like the holes in Swiss cheese, and as we made our way deeper, I could feel anxiety coming off the others. We expected to meet something. We expected to find an army of pumpkin heads. We expected to find more corn creatures. We expected to be pushed back at any time, but the deeper we went without meeting anyone, the higher the tension rose. "I don't like it," Cannon said, moving up behind Randy. "I don't like it one bit." "You did not expect them to make it hard, did you?" Marta said. "I did expect that they would send in a few pumpkin heads or something," Randy said, his breath sounding very loud as it bounced off the walls of the slate cave. "We killed more than 36 of them in the 2 weeks that I've been traveling with you," Devin said, and I jumped because it was the first time I'd heard him speak. "I can't imagine he has many left. Pumpkins are a little out of season." "Even so, I expected something. The corn creatures couldn't have been it." We came into a wide cave, about as big as a cathedral, and this was where I had seen her in my dreams from earlier. She was still there, chained to a stalagmite near the center, her arms up and hanging from a ring bolt. She looked ragged. The garment she was wearing looked like an old bedsheet. Someone had been beating her. That much was obvious. Her face looked like hamburger meat. The bruises were even more black than blue, and it appeared that Tobias's fears had been justified. The green man hadn't gotten the response he wanted, and he had started working her over as her time got closer to coming full circle. "It's her," Randy said, and Marta's eyes became wet as she saw her. "I never dreamed I would see her again. I searched for her at the farthest reaches of the earth, but I never dreamed I would lay eyes on her." For a moment, we all just stood there and looked at her, as if we expected her to melt into nothing. "How do we approach this?" I asked, as the seconds stretched by and no one made a move. "I don't know," Randy said, swallowing a mouthful of spit. "In my wildest dreams, I never imagined I'd make it this far." I took a step, the others still seeming to be trapped in the moment, and as each step took me a little closer to the source of my joy, of my power, and I wasn't immediately struck down by an unseen hand, I felt my pace quickening. Something touched my ankle, and I nearly jumped away in fear before seeing that it was the Gordling. He had jumped from Randy's shoulder and was neck and neck with me as we came to the lady. She never stirred, but she was breathing. The chains were heavy-looking, and as I pulled out my cudgel to take a swing at them, I knew I was going to need something heavier than that. "Sam," she whispered, and I looked down to see her looking through her one good eye. The other was so swollen that it couldn't open at all, but her smile told me everything I needed to know. "I'm going to get you out of here. Is there a key? How do I—" "Sam!" Randy yelled, and when the lady screamed, I ducked as a huge blade passed low enough to nick my ear before slamming into the stalagmite. I looked up, expecting to see the green man, but instead, I looked up into the feline eyes of Wystanther. "You shouldn't have come," the elf growled, his normally cheerful face set in a mask of fury. "Now I have to kill you, right along with your friends." That was when the green man stepped out of the back of the cave, his ghostly armor looking very green in the primordial blue of the cavern. He was shorter than I remembered him, but I'd mostly seen him a horse the last time. Even so, he was still a very imposing 7 feet tall, his sword just as big and sharp as the last time I'd seen it. The darkness behind him rippled as a group of pumpkin heads came grinning in his shadow, each of them carrying some kind of weapon.
"Looks as if my pursuers have come right into my trap. Kill them all! No survivors!"
The pumpkin heads cackled and danced as they flooded past him. "Charge!" Randy yelled, and the Brandylow shook the ceiling with their war cry as they came on the run. His swing had missed the lady and I, but just barely. Wysanther struggled, trying to get his blade free, and I took full advantage as I swung my cudgel at his head. It wasn't quite as refined a weapon as his fey sword, but it had the advantage of an iron head. That was one thing I always remembered from the stories my gran had told me about the fairies. They were resilient, but they could be hurt, even killed, with cold iron. He dodged the club as it swung for his head, but when I swooped it down so it would connect with his chest, he was only saved from having it caved in by the armor that he wore. Even so, the armor made a very pretty smashing sound as it shattered like glass.
"Son of a..."
But he shut up as I punched him in the mouth. His sword was stuck in the stalagmite and his armor was busted up, but if I let him get his feet back under him, I'd be no match for his strength and speed. He was the champion of the Summer Fae, the general for Titania's troops, and he was so juiced up on Fae magic that he could probably cave my chest in with a single punch. Wysanther was used to fighting Fae. If I let him get an inch, I'd be dead. He spat up a mouthful of bright pink blood, and as he snarled at me, I punched him again. I kept hitting him, kept rocking his shit, and when his back hit the wall, I slammed my fist into the broken remains of his breastplate. I don't know if anyone has ever ground glass into your chest, but as my fist slammed into his armor, I cried out nearly as loud as he did. My knuckles bled and my arms burned, but I just kept hitting him. I smashed and smashed and smashed, and I started to think that I might be able to come out of this with the lady. Then Wysanther caught my fist and twisted it. My wrist broke cleanly, and I cried out as I stumbled away from him. "You stupid animal," he growled, his speech thick with blood and pain. "I have come too far to let you stand in my way." He was breathing heavily, his hand on his jaw as he approached the sword again. I hoped it had hurt him badly, though I couldn't have broken the jaw if he was talking. He moved in gingerly, testing it a few times before gripping the sword and wrenching it out. He was breathing heavily as he stood looming over her, and I looked for my club as he approached the lady. "Why?" she asked suddenly, her words freezing him in place. "Why turn against me, Wysanther? We've always been close. Why would you hurt me?" I couldn't see his face, but I could hear the sigh that escaped him. "Why?" "Because, lady, I've stood by Titania's side for..." He thought about it, but finally just shrugged. "And in that time, I've heard her worry over you. Not whether you would succeed or what you would do, but when you might dethrone her." "I would never," the lady said, sounding horrified. "Why not? You do what she does. You control what she controls. There is no balance between the two of you, and even Mab knows it. Mab bullies your counterpart, but she fears him as well. You are outside the natural order. You're an anomaly, a freak. And for her to feel secure, for my queen to feel secure, I have to destroy you." Wysanther hefted the sword, and I glanced wildly for the club that I had dropped. "It's nothing personal," he said, almost apologetically. I had honestly hoped that I could just seal you up, and that would fix things. But you got out. I saw then that if you could do it once, you could do it again. That means destroying you is the best way to handle this situation." "It was you," the lady whispered, nearly crying. "You sealed me in that statue. You didn't think the Green Man had the idea all on his own, did you? He's a brute, but he has his uses. I was merciful then, but I know better now. Goodbye, my lady." But he stopped when something little and orange hit him in the ankle. Wystanther looked down at the Gordling as he savaged his leg with his little pumpkin teeth. He laughed as he turned to give it his full attention. The lady moaned a little in her throat as she saw it. The creature worried at him, but its soft little teeth did very little to his armored leg. It was such a fierce little thing for a gourd, and as I found the handle of my club in the dark cave, I knew I'd never make it back in time to save either of them. Wystanther looked at her, shaking his head. That's what I think she fears the most about you. You inspire such devotion in these creatures. It's really quite astounding. However, his booted foot went right through the little Gordling as he fell in two halves as the Fey Knight kicked him to pieces. It's also unfair, since they're rarely very sturdy. Goodbye, then. This doesn't bring me any joy, but it is necessary." He raised the sword to cut her down, and that was when I lost it. Something about seeing that pile of smashed pumpkin guts, and the woman who was my everything, looking so terrified, sent me into a rage. I tackled him around the waist and threw him to the ground. He fell in a harsh screech of metal, but he kept holding his sword. I reared back to club him, rolling him so I could get him in the face. I was so angry. I hadn't always been fair to the little pumpkin guy, but he hadn't deserved that. He had come across multiple states and tracked her by sense alone, and he'd been brave in the face of things that saw him as compost. When she had needed him, he had tried to help her in his own way. He hadn't deserved to be pulped. He had deserved much better, and I felt like crying as I swung my club at Wystanther. I was going to make this asshole hurt the way that I hurt, but my blow never fell. He had shoved the tip of his sword into my chest, and the metal felt cold as it passed out the back of me. His face was furious, his eyes more winter than summer, and when he pushed the blade deeper, it took my breath away. "I am tired of being thrown down and pummeled by the likes of you. You are an ant. You are nothing to me. You are no champion to her. You're the dirt beneath my heels, and I have had enough of you." I closed my eyes and gritted my teeth. I had broken bones before. I had scraped my hands. I'd hit my head, and once I'd even cracked my tailbone and needed minor surgery. This was worse than all that. I hadn't been sure that I could die, but as his sword pushed into me, I could feel myself beginning to float a little. I was a goner. This was it. I supposed I wouldn't have to break my oath to Tobias. The foot of sword in my chest was going to do it for me. So with the last of my strength, I let gravity bring my arms and my body weight down. I rode that sword all the way to the hilt, but the metal tip of my club bashed every one of his stupid teeth out of his perfect mouth. I kept slamming my arms down as I buried him with my weight, and to my surprise, he didn't just shove me off. I summoned all the strength I could find, really tapped into the reserve, and just kept bashing into his stupid, smug face as my blood pattered onto him. He stopped moving after the 5th blow, but I didn't care. I rained nearly a dozen blows, smashing them into him. When my strength was exhausted, I lay still and felt my life ebbing away. This was it. I had succeeded. The sounds of battle were raging nearby, and I hoped my people were winning. I heard the chatter of gunfire. I guess cannon really did have some bullets left, and it mingled with the garbled French of Marta's battle cry. Randy cried out in his guttural rebel yell, and it sounded like whatever was going on, they were doing okay. That was good, I guess. I suppose I could die knowing that I'd saved her. She was yelling my name, but her voice was husky and fading. I wanted to turn and look at her, just one last look, but I couldn't summon anything else. I was tapped like a leaky keg, and I didn't have anything left for a last look. It was weird. You always hear that death is cold, but I was actually starting to sweat a little. It was really warm all of a sudden, and as my vision faded, I noticed a bright light coming from between Wysanther and I. I'd always imagined that the light was a metaphor or something, but no, here it was. It was rising from between us, ignoring all the blood and gore, and slipping into me. The light had left Wysanther and gone into me. It had entered me. Suddenly, I was coming back. My vision was clearing. My strength was returning. And as I sat up and reached for the sword, I slid it out as easily as Arthur from the stone. It weighed no more than my club, and as I looked down at the dead Fey Knight, he dissolved into more light that seemed to fly to me. The light flew into me, filling me with a radiance I'd never known. And when I looked down, I was wearing the armor of Titania's knight. It was new, remade just for me. And when I turned to question the lady, she looked shocked. "Oh, God, Sam, what have you done?" I don't know. What have I done? I thought I was dying. Smoothly, with less effort than I would swat a fly, I swung the sword and broke her chains. The lady fell onto the stone, and I got down so I could help her. She'd fallen next to the destroyed Gordling, and as my eyes fell on him, I felt some of my joy ebb away. I reached out a hand to the pieces of the brave little thing, not really intending to do anything, but something happened nonetheless. With a flash of light, they came back together, and the Gordling shook itself as it yarked and jumped to butt against my hand. I was happy to see him, really I was, but what the hell was going on? Suddenly I heard a harsh cry and looked down into the carnage not far away from me. The Brandula were beating them back, but not without losses. The Pumpkinheads were numerous, and they were quick. They had killed about 8 of us in the short time that Wysanther and I had been fighting, and they were beginning to back the remaining Brandula into a corner. Nearby, Randy and the Green Man were trading blows. His club was splintered, and the huge sword the armored knight was wielding trailed frost with each sweep. Randy had a hand on his chest, the wound there a long and jagged thing, and the Green Man lifted his blade as he prepared to end him. I was moving before I really meant to. I slammed into the green night, much as I had another night recently. And he stumbled. I put myself between Randy and the Winter Lord, and when I lifted my sword to point at him, the green man seemed unsure. Hell, Randy seemed unsure of what was going on either. And as the two of them goggled at me, I decided to see how far I could push this. The lady is free and your partner is dead. It's over, you Scooby-Doo fuck. Now kick rocks. Take your pumpkin patch kids with you, too. I got a long bus ride ahead of me, and I've had quite enough weirdness for today. Thank you. I must have said something right, because the green man did just that. He took a step back, then another, and as the darkness swarmed up to block his escape, I saw that the pumpkin heads were leaving too. A cheer went up from the Brandylow as they gathered around us, and I went back to the lady to make sure she was okay. She was sitting with the Gordling, the little pumpkin pleased as punch to see her, and I took off my new cloak when I noticed her shivering. "Guess he wasn't as tough as he looked," I said, sheathing my sword. He turned tail pretty quick once he got a look at me. "It wasn't you," she whispered, pointing a shaky finger over my shoulder. "He felt something bigger coming." I turned around just in time to see a shimmering portal open and see the Queen of Light and Life and the Queen of Air and Darkness step into the cave. I'd seen Titania flustered, but I had rarely seen her angry. Today, however, she was livid. "Someone has killed my knight and stolen his power, and I will be damned if I let such an affront stand." Oops. Guess I had some explaining to do.
You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.